Hello, welcome to the Reikai Tante Files. Today I'm going to be continuing my Villains of Yu Hakusho segment. Alright, so I'm going to be doing the villains of the Genkai Tournament, and before I formally begin, I honestly don't believe that any of the other contestants in the tournament are considered villains. I feel like that they're, like I said, contestants. If you had a soccer match or a chess match, the person you're battling is just your opponent. They're not really a villain of anything. They really don't wish to kill our heroes for no reason. They don't want to take over the world. They're not trying to, they don't have any villainous schemes. They're just, normal people pretty much. But I'm going to go over them anyway. So first we have Kuroda. He states that he's a contract killer. We don't get much screen time with him because he has one fight against Kazemaru and loses. Now I just want to say that I really do enjoy this character's design. He's this big guy and he's got these glasses. I think it's really the glasses that do it for me. Besides Mr. Iwamoto, no other villains or even characters in this series really have glasses. Oh, and Kaito, but whatever. And then next we have Chinpo. He states that he's a wanderer, and out of all the contestants in the tournament, he seems to be the legitimate most gentle and nice of the group. We also don't get much screen time with him because he faces Shorin in the first round, and therefore he loses. So we don't really get to see too much of him. Now, I always felt like that out of all the contestants, he probably would not have been a very good pupil for Genkai because of how nice he is and how Genkai is. That's the reason why I think Yusuke and Genkai go so well together, because of their personalities. I don't think Chinpo would have lasted 1 minute with Genkai. Next we have Musashi. We get more screen time with him because he does fight Kuwabara in the first round, and because of Musashi's sword, Kuwabara is able to harness the power of his spirit sword. Now Musashi states that he likes to destroy evil with his Shibato sword. Now he claims that Kuwabara is evil, and honestly, he says that when he hits a demon with the sword, the demon dies. But when he hits Kuwabara, Kuwabara doesn't die. So wouldn't that just automatically make Kuwabara not evil, by logic? But I really don't think that Musashi's too well in the head, because he was already declaring that Kuwabara was an evil demon. And besides, look at this guy. Out of all the other contestants, this guy looks like he's the villain. He's got that, eye patch that's used in, every classic, 80s or 90s cartoon. I just feel like he needs to be wearing a suit and smoking a cigar and stroking a cat. Next we have Kibano. Again, we get more screen time with him because Yusuke fights him in the first round. Now, Kibano states that he is a master of every martial art. And he does showcase pretty much a good deal of his martial art power. But the thing about Kibano is, while he does showcase a lot of his power, he's not saying oh, I'm going to try out all these moves on you, or oh, I'm going to talk a lot and end up having to show all you these moves. Kind of like he ate and then eventually Rando end up doing. Now, I don't feel like that Yusuke would have lost in a quote-unquote fair fight between Kibano, but I think it would have been much more interesting to see them fight in the light. Or if Kibano didn't have the mask, to see, what would have gone down. Kibano uses this mask to block out his sight, smell, and hearing, so that he can focus everything on spiritual energy, so that he can see Yusuke in the dark. Now, I'm just wondering where he kept this mask on his person. It's not like he's got, a bag. He didn't have a bag with him. He's not like a big guy and he can, store things. I really don't know where he kept this mask. Or even why he was, before he left for the tournament, can't even be alright, robe, undershirt, mask so I can see in the dark, you know what I mean? Just kind of silly. But I do think that Kibano was a pretty good villain for Yusuke in the end. Alright, and lastly of the contestants, we have Kazemaru. Now again, we have more screen time with Kazemaru because Yusuke fights him in the second round. Kazemaru was a ninja, and in the first round against Kuroda, he uses a spiritual blast. Almost pretty soon in the fight, too. Which I always thought was weird. Kazemaru's a ninja, and Kuroda was using, some hand daggers at Kazemaru. So, for a ninja, that really shouldn't be a threat too much. I know Kuroda was very skilled with the knives, but I really don't see how that could be too much of a threat to a ninja. In his fight against Yusuke, though, he doesn't use any real spiritual power. He uses some shuriken throwing knives with gunpowder stored in the tips so that they explode. But the knives will follow you until they hit their target. Yusuke ends up again winning on luck by falling into a swamp, thus causing the knives to collide into Kazemaru, thus resulting in his loss. I don't really find Kazemaru too interesting. I kind of like Kibano the best out of all these, the ones that we really get to know. I think he was a legitimately good opponent for, Yusuke. Kazemaru, I just feel like he was just trying to outsmart these weapons that he had. It wasn't really a fight of wits or a fight of, strength. It was really just a fight of him trying to outsmart these little knives that he had. Like, Kazemaru really didn't have any control over them. It's not like he's like, oh, I control them. No, he doesn't. They follow Yusuke. So, not really a very interesting fight. And, I mean, he's an okay opponent. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. Alright, and next I'm actually going to talk about Baldock. Baldock is a bat demon that lives in Genkai's little forest. Yusuke bumps into him because he takes the straight path through the forest. Now, he does state that Baldock is not as much of a threat to him because he fought Hiei, and he's not nearly as fast as Hiei. I pretty much think Baldock was thrown in there so that it really wasn't really Yusuke versus Baldock. It was really Yusuke versus time. He needed to get to the to where Genkai was in his time limit, and he ran over his time limit because he had to fight Baldock. But also because he had to fight Baldock, Genkai made the exception of letting him through. Now, just a note about Baldock, if you ever watched Yu Yu Hakusho, the abridged series, Lania Patora does make a really funny joke about Baldock. It's a flashback in where Yusuke's fighting Suzaku, and he's talking to Genkai, and Genkai says, who was the last opponent you fought where not even the slightest bit of luck, accounted in your victory? And he was like, Baldock. And she's like nagging on him, like, oh, the great Baldock Slayer, whatever shall we do? Like, it was just really, really funny. I honestly think that's the funniest joke in Yu Yu Hakusho Abridged, is the great Baldock Slayer. Alright, so let's move on. And lastly, we have Shorin / Rando. Now, Yusuke's case here is to unmask Rando in whatever form he's taken in the tournament, defeat him, and then become Genkai's pupil. Now, of course, we don't fight Rando until the very last fight. Kuwabara fights him first and almost gets killed in the process. And when Yusuke fights him, he originally does fight him as Shorin really quickly. But Yusuke's able to overpower him, fairly easily. So he has to unmask himself and reveal himself as Rando. Now, I'm probably not the only person who thought this, but when I very first saw Rando, all I could think of was Kurama. Maybe it's because he has red hair. Maybe if he had, blue hair or something, I wouldn't think it. But his hair is almost identical to Kurama's hair. And so a lot of people do think of Rando as, a Kurama copycat. And, I mean, it's within the same, show. So I really don't see, being oh my god, he copied off him so much. But I feel like the design could have been a little bit better in that respect. And the respect that Kurama didn't look very threatening, neither does Rando. He looks more threatening than Kurama, most because of the tribal tattoos that he has on his face, and and you can see his muscles and everything, but overall, he still looks very feminine and not very scary. Now, here's another thing. This is Yusuke's second fight where he's had someone who talks way too much. First it was Hiei, and now it's Rando. Rando likes to talk too much, and he likes to show off too much. He wanted to play with all of his little powers that he had, and in order to do this, he had to pretty much, keep Yusuke alive. Every time he thought, though, that Yusuke was going to be finished by this next attack, he would show off 3 more before trying to finish him off again. So we saw a lot of Rando's attacks, but I feel like that if Rando really wanted to, he could have, especially in the state Yusuke was in, he could have been finished off very, very easily. I really didn't consider Rando to be very interesting of a villain. Really, his only goal was to get Genkai's power so that he could use it on his own. They never really even say, he wants to, kill a lot of people with it. They just assume that, oh, he's a demon, he's gonna kill people. Which I think is a pretty bad assumption. I'm not saying that Rando was gonna go out and cure cancer with his new powers, but Rando never actually says, once I get this power, I'm gonna take over the world. Or, I'm going to do this or do that. He's already in human world, so that can't be his ploy. A lot of demons in demon world want to go to human world, mostly so they can feed and cause havoc, but But I still feel it's a pretty unfair assumption that they were just like, oh, Rando's going to kill a lot of people when he gets this power. Now, overall, I think the characters have started to become more interesting, especially the villains in the series. So what do you guys think? Are any of these guys your favorite villains? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, sayonara, bye-bye.